Good afternoon from the National Weather Service office in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I'm meteorologist Donald Jones with your 2 p.m. update on the tropics. We do have some tropical activity out there here in this second week of July. And the good news is all of my programs are working today. If you were with us yesterday, we were about 30 minutes late in getting started with our briefing. So fortunately, it appears everything's working. The audio is working, the video is working, and we are streaming on all of our platforms. So we're on Facebook, X, and YouTube this afternoon. We're going to talk about the potential tropical cyclone. Well, it's not actually officially a potential tropical cyclone because that is an actual thing, but this is a potential tropical disturbance, let's call it that, in the Gulf of Mexico here over the next couple of days and potentially impacting parts of our region. Now, bottom line up front, the big impact that we're expecting across our area is going to be the heavy rainfall and flash flood threat. This does not look like it's going to be a major wind threat. You know, even if it does strengthen into a tropical storm over the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America, I'm going to do that a lot, over the next couple of days, it's still not going to be expected to become a major hurricane or probably not even going to become a hurricane at all. So this is not expected to be a major wind event. This is going to be much more of a flash flood and heavy rain threat. There may be some tidal surges on the lower end, because anytime we get, 40, 50 mile an hour winds out there, that is going to push some tides inland. So 2, maybe 3 feet of, you would call it storm surge technically, but it's more like tidal flooding, is not out of the realm of possibility. But even that's not really being indicated very strong by models here thus far. So it's going to be a fairly weak system, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to be a threat, because heavy rainfall and flash flooding, as we all know and have seen very recently with events in Texas, Mexico, and now in the Northeast, flooding is a major issue. It's actually the largest killer of people in tropical systems. So it's still something that we definitely need to pay attention to over the next couple of days and really through the weekend. As always, this is a live interactive briefing. So if you have any questions as we go through our briefing, feel free to post them in our comment section. I want to try something real quick here before we jump into the briefing. This program of mine is supposed to enable us to put comments or scroll comments on the screen here. I'm not sure if it's working at the moment. It kind of doesn't look like it is. I'll just leave that there for a moment. We'll see if it pops up on your screen. So to actually see the comment thread, looks like it's kind of working. So I'll leave that up there for the moment. I'll take it down if it gets in the way. But if you do have comments or questions as we go through our briefing, feel free to post them in there. We'll be happy to answer them just as soon as we wrap up our briefing. Let's go ahead and jump into it here this afternoon. This is the latest look at the tropical disturbance here behind me on the satellite. You can see there is bands kind of out all the way down as far south as Cuba and as far west as southeast Louisiana. This is rain associated with the system here across the central Gulf Coast. The center of circulation is right here, just about to move inland across the coast of Florida, with most of the stronger rainfall actually over Florida at the moment. Now, no intensification obviously is going to happen while it's over the Florida peninsula, but this is going to continue to be pushed to the west here and will reemerge over the northeastern Gulf later on tonight or perhaps early tomorrow morning. After that, we could potentially see a little bit in the way of strengthening as the storm continues to move to the west. Now, we don't have an official track, but I'm going to show you kind of our best estimate for the track here in just a moment. But the bottom line is, again, this is not expected to be a major system, even if it does intensify into a tropical depression or a tropical storm. It's likely going to remain very weak. The next name on the list is Dexter. So if it does get a name, that's what it would be. But we don't expect this to turn into a hurricane or a major hurricane at this point. 3 to 6 inches of rain is kind of what we're expecting, widespread amounts. And then within that, we could be looking at some locally much higher amounts, up to possibly 15 inches in some locations. I'll show you that here in more detail here in just a moment. But I want to start by, if this will work, it's not going to work, is it? Couldn't have everything work, about just kind of give you an idea here as far as how this storm is going to progress. So again, the storm right now, the center, if you want to call it a center, it's barely a center, but if you want to call it one, it's right up in here. It's going to be moving across Florida here as we go through the afternoon and evening. Then it's going to reemerge out over the northeastern Gulf and continue generally gradually to the west. the Hurricane Center has indicated that there might be a little bit of a southwestward motion with it for about 24 hours or so. Now, the further south that this storm gets, the longer it's going to spend out over open water and away from land, and the stronger it could potentially wind up getting. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean if it goes further south, it's going to wind up becoming a hurricane, but this may be the difference between, say, a non-named system and a weak tropical storm Dexter or something along those lines. So, even if it just stays, 50, 100 miles off the coast, that would be favorable enough conditions for some gradual intensification to begin. Then it's eventually going to curve inland back across the northern Gulf Coast. Exactly where that's going to occur is still up for debate, but the general computer model consensus is probably somewhere across southeast Louisiana. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we couldn't see it move inland across coastal Mississippi or Alabama, or even push further to the west across southwest Louisiana. But the bottom line here is, like we were talking about, even if we don't have an exact track for it yet, the fact that this is expected to remain a weak system means that the exact center of circulation where that landfall actually occurs isn't really an important factor, because you're not talking about necessarily an eye wall with very strong winds. The important part here is to keep in mind is that we're looking at these rain bands. And look how far away from the center of circulation this rain band is. We're talking several hundred miles. So even if we are looking at a southeast Louisiana landfall in a couple of days, these rain bands could potentially extend all the way into southeast Texas, or further to the east, all the way back into the Florida Panhandle. So the rainfall is the big story, and the rainfall is going to occur much further away from the center of circulation. So where the storm actually makes landfall is not as big of an issue with this system, and that's not usually the case when we're talking about any kind of a weak tropical system. So this is a look. Let me go ahead and make this full screen here. It might be a little bit easier to read that way. So we are looking at now a 40% chance. The Hurricane Center is giving this storm a 40% chance of development. They actually upgraded that yesterday evening. I'm going to turn the questions off here for just a second so we can actually be able to read. And I'm going to get me out of the way too. But essentially what we're looking here is a little less than 50-50 chance for development. Now, like I said, the development is not going to occur today or tonight because the storm is going to be moving over the Florida coast. But once it reemerges back out over the eastern Gulf, that's when we could potentially be looking at some development. So we're essentially looking at from tomorrow morning through whenever it moves back inland, which is likely going to be sometime Thursday, maybe early Friday. But that's kind of what we're looking at as far as the timeline for its progression across the northern Gulf and Gulf Coast. So let's talk a little bit about what kind of conditions we're looking at across the area here as far as favorability for development. What we're looking at right now is the winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere. You can see the reds and oranges and greens there. Those are areas of higher winds. The blues are the lower areas. Let me go ahead and I'm going to come back to me and kind of explain what's driving this system here. So if you were with us yesterday, I talked about this a little bit. We've got an area of high pressure. Why is this not drawing? We've got an area of high pressure out here over the western Atlantic, and winds around high pressure systems go clockwise like that. But think of high pressure as kind of like a shield. So if you think about, here's a circle, we'll put a star on it because this is Captain America's shield. There it is. That is horrible. Don't worry about that though. But here is our low pressure area right now, our little disturbance. This is going to gradually build to the west across Florida and into the eastern Gulf, and that is going to essentially push this system to the west. At the same time, again, this clockwise motion of these winds is also going to kind of begin to push it, make it turn off to the north here as this kind of builds to the west. So there's the interacting feature of the whole system moving to the west, and then there's also the clockwise motion of the winds around it. So that's what's going to kind of eventually steer it up into the northern Gulf Coast somewhere. Exactly where is still a matter of some debate, but that kind of gives you an idea as to what's actually steering the storm. Now, it's not going to be moving very fast. We're looking at a forward motion, probably 10 miles an hour or less, and that's going to be as it moves across the Gulf. And once it gets inland, it actually may wind up stalling out, which is bad news when we're talking about rainfall totals. This is going to be a slow-moving system as it moves inland before it eventually winds up dissipating. So the longer, unfortunately, it sits over us, the more that those rainfall totals are going to pile up. So for our area, southeast Texas, southwest Louisiana, we're going to be looking at essentially at least 3 days of pretty significant rainfall beginning Thursday morning and continuing all day Thursday, all day Friday, probably just about all day Saturday, and then eventually getting out of here. We could still see some storms into Sunday morning, but I think by Sunday morning, most of it will probably be over with. But that's roughly about 72 hours of dealing with this very tropical air mass, regardless of how strong it is. So kind of keep that in mind when we're talking about rainfall totals. It's not going to happen all at once, but this is the potential for some long duration heavy rainfall. Sea surface temperatures are plenty warm enough and favorable enough for tropical development. We're looking at upper 80s across pretty much the entire Gulf, even closer to 90 right along the immediate Louisiana coastline. So plenty favorable for development. We need only 80 degrees to get a tropical system supported by sea surface temperatures. The other big thing that we look at is wind shear. When we have strong wind shear, that tends to kind of decapitate storms and prevent them from developing. The wind shear is actually going to be fairly low across the eastern Gulf. Just like we were looking at earlier, the blues represent low winds. The oranges and yellows, those are higher winds. So there are some higher winds across the western Gulf and the western Atlantic, but you can see very low winds in the eastern Gulf where this system is going to be moving into. So it's a low shear environment with plenty warm enough sea surface temperatures. And so that's generally going to be some favorable conditions for gradual tropical development. One of the limiting factors with this is how close to land is it going to be? How far offshore can it get? And how long will it remain offshore? That's going to go a long way in determining eventually how strong this storm eventually becomes. Either way, again, we're still expecting it to remain a fairly weak tropical storm. We do have a flood watch that's now in effect. This was actually just issued a short time ago by yours truly. And this is for that rain. Now, this doesn't actually go into effect until Thursday morning. This was issued today, but it's not going to actually become effective until Thursday morning. But this will go through 7 p.m. Saturday. And right now, this is for Vermilion, Acadia, Evangeline, St. Landry, Lafayette, St. Martin, Iberia, and St. Mary parishes. I've already gotten some questions about will this be extended further to the west? Will Lake Charles get under this flood watch? Will Southeast Texas get under this flood watch? It's certainly a possibility. At this point, the South Central and Southeast Louisiana looks like they're going to see the highest overall rainfall totals. So with that in mind, we went ahead and did the flood watch for that area. But it is possible that this could be extended further to the west here going forward tonight or tomorrow. And then once we get a better idea of exactly how strong the storm is going to wind up being and kind of narrow down where those highest rainfall swaths are, we'll be able to narrow down where the highest risk for flooding is going to be. Go forward. Okay. So let's talk now about rainfall totals. Let me go ahead and turn off the comments here for just a second so you can take a look at this graphic. This is our forecast rainfall totals. I'm going to show you this, and then I'm also going to show you what we're calling our worst case scenario. So this is kind of what we're expecting. This is the most likely scenario in terms of rainfall totals. You can see the areas that are in the flood watch, looking at anywhere between about 4 and 8 inches of rainfall. Further to the west across western Louisiana, a little bit lower, 3 to 4, maybe 4 to 6, depending on exactly where you are. Southeast Texas, your rainfall totals are going to be a little bit lower than that even. So we're looking at generally 1 to 3 across Southeast Texas. So as you would expect, the further west you go, the lower the overall rainfall totals are going to be. This is based on a current the current forecast track that brings it roughly into the Southeast Louisiana area. Now within that, now, I want to preface this by saying the graphic I'm about to show you is not going to happen everywhere. Again, this is what our worst case scenario is going to look like. So a few spots could potentially see as much as this much. And for South Central Louisiana, the areas that are in the flood watch, there are a few spots that may see up to 10 to 15 inches of rain. Now, not everybody's going to see that, but some part of South Central Louisiana will have the potential to see that. You can see a much larger general swath of anywhere between about 4 up to 8 inches of rain across a large part of Southeast Texas and Southwest Louisiana. Even parts of Southeast Texas, in a worst case scenario, could see up to 8 inches of rain in a few locations. So that's important to keep in mind. I had someone ask me earlier if Southeast Texas was kind of out of the woods because they were going to be seeing lower rainfall totals. No, there are the way, the thing about tropical systems, and anybody who's been around here for any length of time can attest to this. You get these rain bands that set up across a pretty narrow area, and they'll sometimes go for hours and hours and hours over the same 10, 20-mile swath. And those areas will wind up with 10, 15 inches of rain, whereas just a few miles away, you have an area that sees, an inch or two or something much, much lower. So that's the point I'm trying to make here, is that there is a risk across the entire area, depending on where those bands set up. Not everybody's going to see a huge amount of rainfall, but the higher risk is going to be south central Louisiana. But if you get one of those rain bands over you, you could potentially see something of this magnitude, 6 to 8 inches across southwest Louisiana, and then even higher across south central Louisiana. Of course, this is going to change, probably almost certainly, over the next couple of days as we get a better handle on it. But this is our current forecast. That is our official forecast for rainfall totals. So for over towards the Lafayette, Morgan City, New Iberia, Opelousas, you're looking at anywhere between 4 to 8 inches of rain over that 3-day period. This isn't going to happen all at once. This is Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But further to the west, say Lake Charles, up towards DeRidder, Alexandria, anywhere between 2 to 4 inches of rain. And then southeast Texas, generally 1 to 3, but potentially could see as much as 6 to, on the high end, 15 inches of rain in a few locations. And then you see the little graph, or the little comment there at the bottom of this graphic that says there's actually a 10% chance that rainfall totals can be higher than this. So this is not the absolute highest it could be. We call this our reasonable worst case scenario, because this is this will include all but the most extreme outliers for the precipitation totals. All right, with that in mind, I want to talk about the probabilities of flash flooding real quick. This is actually starting Wednesday. Now, this is going to be mainly Wednesday evening. You can see south central Louisiana in that marginal risk for excessive rainfall. So this will include the New Iberia, Morgan City area. This is roughly about a 5% chance, or greater than 5% chance, I should say, of seeing flash flooding as early as late Wednesday. Now, as we get into Thursday, the probabilities are going to go much higher. And actually, right before we came on the air here, we just did a consultation with the Weather Prediction Center, who produces these graphics, and they indicated that they're actually going to increase these probabilities here in a little while. So this information I'm giving you here is going to be a little bit outdated shortly. So the probabilities of flooding are actually going to go up from what you're seeing here. But essentially, the yellow area there is between roughly about a 15 to 30% chance of seeing flooding within 25 miles of any given location in that area. So, for example, Lafayette, for Thursday, there's a 15 to 30% chance of seeing flash flooding within 25 miles of a point. In this graphic, that slight risk, that yellow, is actually going to be extended from pretty much to cover pretty much the entire area here with this updated graphic. So essentially, I know what the graphic is showing there, but think about it from the perspective of right now. For Thursday, there's a 15 to 30% chance of seeing flash flooding within 25 miles of any location across our area. Okay, so when you think about that compared to a normal day, when we're talking about the probability of seeing flooding is very close to zero, a 15 to 30% chance is actually pretty high. Going into Friday, you can see we add that moderate risk. That's a roughly 30 to 40% chance of seeing, or it's actually, at least 40% chance, 40 to, what is the other one? 40 to 69. So that's a pretty high probability of seeing flooding. And the moderate risk for this is actually going to be extended across pretty much all of South Louisiana. So even though the red there doesn't necessarily include the Lake Charles and Alexandria areas, it will within the next hour or so. So kind of keep that in mind, that essentially a 40 to 70% chance of seeing flooding within 25 miles of any location across South Louisiana. That's pretty high. And it wouldn't surprise me if before this is over with, we actually see a high-risk area added to these graphics. Heading into Saturday, we're starting, the storm will likely be moving inland by that point, so it'll be decaying and breaking down. Excuse me, we are still going to be looking at the potential for rainfall accumulation on Saturday, and that's going to be in addition to the rain that fell Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So Saturday may wind up being the higher risk day, just for the fact that everything's going to be saturated. Chances are the rivers are going to be full. Each progressive day, as we add on rainfall totals, the risk increases for the potential for flash flooding. So that's what we have here for the National Weather Service this afternoon. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in our comment section. I do see a few out there right now. I'll be happy to answer them here over the next little while. If not, our next briefing will be, we are going to do another one tomorrow at 2 p.m. We'll do it earlier if the storm intensifies and gets designated as either a tropical depression or tropical storm. We'll then rotate into our more routine time frames, which will be 10:30, 4:30, 10:30, etc. That follows the Hurricane Center's updates. But for now, if it's not named, we'll continue with this the 2 p.m. briefings, because that works out pretty well for my schedule and trying to put together the forecast and everything. So 2 p.m. tomorrow, if not before then, if they wind up putting a track on it and naming the storm. If you don't have any questions, you're welcome to head out. If you do, or if you just want to hang out with me for a little while, I'll be happy to talk to you here. So let me go ahead and back up and answer some questions. Did I just get in touch with my inner really bad French there with the questions? I'll throw the forecast rainfall graphics up there too. Kim's asking about the tides across Texas. The tides are generally, it's going to depend on whether we have a north wind or a south wind, which depends on exactly where the storm track moves. But generally, even if we do have a south wind, if we're talking about a weak tropical storm, we're probably only going to be looking at tides running maybe 2 to 3 feet above normal. So it's going to be a small storm surge in a worst case scenario. But right now, most of our forecast models aren't showing any real increase in tides across southeast Texas, because chances are you're going to be on the west side of that center of circulation, whatever it is. So you'll be looking at a north wind. Natalie wants to know who did a rain dance. I don't dance, so it was not me. Stephanie asked, can we get tornadoes? There is always a tornado risk when we're talking about a landfalling tropical system. Now, this being potentially a very weak landfalling tropical system, the overall tornado risk is going to be very low. Usually, if we're having tornadoes with a tropical system, that's usually at and to the right of the center of circulation. So if it winds up kind of as we're expecting and the center of circulation winds up over southeast Louisiana, the risk of tornadoes across our area would be very low to virtually non-existent. If it were to track a little bit further west and we have that center closer to us, there may be a low-end risk for tornadoes. But I think the risk of tornadoes is going to be lower than it would be for, a strong tropical storm or a hurricane. So I'm not going to say it's zero, but the risk is very low right now. And if we were going to see one, it will probably be late Thursday into Friday if we were going to have a tornado risk. Natalie wants to know, when will the rain start on Thursday? Best guess would help. I need to work in New Iberia and Broussard that day. It's probably going to start Thursday morning. It may start for down towards New Iberia. It's probably going to start Wednesday evening. So it'll probably already be ongoing by Thursday morning. Now, further to the west, over towards Lake Charles, southeast Texas, it may be a little bit later in the day Thursday. But for New Iberia, right now we're looking at the rain probably beginning Wednesday evening. So it'll probably be already ongoing by Thursday morning. Amber asks, will I do another update once they make the changes? Not just for the excessive rainfall outlooks, because that'll actually be out in the next 20, 30 minutes or so, if not already. So I'm not going to do another briefing for that, but we will post those graphics on our social media pages. Laura wants to know, I asked the doctor about the barometric pressure regarding labor. I haven't talked to a doctor between yesterday afternoon and today, but I am still curious about that. We were having a debate yesterday about whether the lowering pressure in a tropical system could potentially induce labor. If there are any doctors watching that can inform me on that, I'll be happy to hear it. But yeah, right now that's just a morbid curiosity. Rhonda's asking, what about the wind threat? The wind threat is going to be pretty minor at this point. Like I said, pretty much all of our computer models. There was one computer model yesterday that was developing this system into a strong tropical storm or a hurricane. That model has now come into agreement with the rest of the others that are keeping this a very weak tropical storm, even on the high end at this point. So I don't expect that wind is going to be a major issue. Yeah, it may get a little breezy. It may get a little gusty. You might have a gust of 40 miles an hour or so. But I'm not expecting wind to be a major threat with this system. And because of that, I'm not expecting a whole lot of power outages as well. Now, flash flooding can potentially cause some power outages too, so I'm not going to say there aren't going to be any. But the wind that we traditionally associate with a tropical system, there's not going to be a whole lot of that with this. Even if it does get a name, if it does get named Dexter, we're still talking about a low-end tropical storm. So I don't expect wind to be a major issue. Natalie says I'm awesome. I agree, Natalie. I am awesome. You are awesome. We are collectively awesome. Shelly asks, what is steering the system? We talked about that a little while ago. I'll bring it back up here just for a quick explanation here. And this might be, I'm not sure what'll be easier to show. Let's go ahead and make this full screen. I can't draw on the screen with it like this. I don't think. Maybe I can draw it up here. Give me a second. Let me see if I can draw this. I don't know if this is going to show up or not. Will it? No, it won't. Okay, well, it was worth a shot. Anyway, essentially what we're looking at here is out over the Western Atlantic, we have this area of high pressure, and you can see it kind of moving clockwise there around the Bahamas and the Western Atlantic. That is actually going to expand further to the west, and that is going to push this system across Florida and into the Eastern Gulf. Now, the clockwise motion of that high pressure is eventually going to turn it further to the north, and that is going to push it inland somewhere across the northern Gulf Coast. So there's our high, here's our low, that's potentially the disturbance. That's going to gradually move across as this begins to expand further to the west, and then the clockwise motion of these winds is going to eventually curve it north into, right now we're going to say southeast Louisiana, but it could be anywhere from, say, the Mississippi-Alabama coast all the way to southwest Louisiana. Exactly where still kind of remains to be seen, but that's kind of what's directing this storm right now. And it's not going to be moving very fast, like we talked about earlier. This is going to be a relatively slow-moving system. You can see there's my my rough track. That's not an official track from the Hurricane Center. That's just my crude drawing. Michaela asks, I work in Cameron. Should I be worried about flooding? There is going to be a risk of flooding down in Cameron. There's also going to be the risk of a low-end risk of some tidal surge. With that, again, we talked about earlier, it's going to be relatively minor. But down in Cameron, even a couple of feet of surge is enough to put water over the highway there right at the coast. So that is, you might see some tidal flooding with that. It's very difficult to flood Cameron Parish because it's so, you've got so much marsh down there, all the water runs off into the marsh. So it's very rare that we issue a flash flood warning for Cameron, but you could see some coastal flooding. Hannah asked, should I get sandbags? Sandbags are, I think they're of limited utilitarian use, but there is a risk of flooding. So if there's something that you can sandbag, then yes, by all means. I think, I want to say St. Martin Parish announced they were opening a sandbag location earlier. I feel like I saw that. I'm not 100% sure on that. You'll have to check me. But there may be a few other sites that are going to be opening sandbag locations as well. Liam asks, do we know when the rain might start in the Lake Charles area so I can watch it from my computer? We're probably going to be looking at the rain beginning in Lake Charles sometime early Thursday morning. Jessica asks, could we get flooding like Texas did on the 4th? I don't think it's not going to be as rapid as what was seen in Texas. And here's why. The Texas floods were a combination of the very heavy rainfall and also the geographical makeup. Central Texas is very hilly, so the rain falls. It runs off the hills down to the waterways, in this case, the Guadalupe River. And then all of that collects there very, very quickly. We're very flat over here. We don't have that kind of funneling effect that they have in more hilly areas. So we're not going to get that kind of flooding. Now, if somebody gets 15 inches of rain, that's almost exactly what they got over there in Central Texas. Certainly, we're going to see some flooding, but it's not going to occur as quickly as it did in Central Texas. The Guadalupe River wound up flooding in about 45 minutes. It went from nothing to raging torrent. We don't get that around here because we don't have that funneling effect. So the water will, flooding is going to be a risk, but it's going to be more gradual than what was seen in Central Texas. Karen asks, how do driving conditions look Friday evening, Friday night in Southeast Texas? Rainy. You're going to be driving through some rain, most likely. I've got a lot of people asking about their individual locations. Unfortunately, I can't answer all those questions because we'd be here all night. So I'm trying. It's not that I'm ignoring your questions. It's just that I can't answer individual questions about every individual spot. Tammy said I mentioned stalling. I don't know about a complete stall, but it is going to be moving very slow, and it looks like it is going to slow down, especially once it turns and moves into, wherever it's going to wind up, Louisiana, Mississippi, whatever. It is going to slow down. There's not going to be a lot of forward motion. It's eventually going to move inland, a couple dozen miles or maybe 100 miles or so thereabouts, and then it's not really going to go anywhere from that. It's just going to kind of dissipate from there. So it's not something that's going to make landfall and then rush off to the northeast. Like we sometimes see. This is something that's going to it's going to meander for a couple of days, then it's going to kind of move inland somewhere, and then it's just going to kind of sit. And then it's not going to sit forever because it's going to eventually dissipate. In fact, there's a high pressure area that's going to be moving in by Sunday into Monday of next week. But it is going to be kind of sitting, and that's why we're going to be dealing with it essentially from Wednesday evening all the way through late Saturday and possibly into Sunday. Natalie says, yes, I'm right. St. Martin has a sandbag locations open that they posted an hour ago. So I knew I saw that somewhere. So, yeah, St. Martin has sandbag locations. Other parishes probably will have some sandbag locations, if not immediately, then probably within the next day or so. They're actually, the emergency managers are going to have a briefing themselves here. I think it's at 3:15. So they're going to get the exact same information that I just gave you. You got it first today, so congratulations. But they have their own private briefing because they're special, and that'll be later on this afternoon, and then they'll be making decisions based on that. Jalen's asking, how long will this last? Essentially, we're going to be looking at rain beginning, it looks like Wednesday afternoon, maybe Wednesday evening, and continuing probably through at least Saturday night. Possibly Sunday morning would be the absolute latest, but I'd say pretty likely through at least Saturday evening. Nicole asks, well, driving through Louisiana Friday morning to Florida, should we be worried about flooding? You should be worried about heavy rain. The flooding may be a little more hit and miss, but that whole region, I mean, essentially from here all the way to Florida is going to be looking at the potential for a lot of rain. So there is going to be a flood risk that whole way over. Now, of course, not everybody from here to there is going to flood, but there will be pockets of very heavy rain that could see some significant flooding. Yes, that will be a risk. Natalie says, should we prep for flooding like 2016? Storm stacks will be needed. Storm stacks are recommended for this event, yes. I'm not saying it's going to be like 2016, but that would be a good way to prepare as if it was going to be like that. Better to be over-prepared than under-prepared. And for a few people, a few locations, it might not be too far off from 2016. I think the worst case scenario rainfall totals we were talking about are kind of on a similar threshold to what we saw in 2016. So I'm not saying it's going to happen that way, but in a worst case scenario, it could happen similar to that for somebody. Brooklyn's asking about the tornado risk and the wind risk. The wind risk is very low, as is the tornado risk. I'm not going to say zero because then something will happen and I'll look like an idiot. But even if we're talking about a low-end tropical storm, that's 40-mile-an-hour winds, 50-mile-an-hour winds, and that's over open water. Once those winds actually begin to work inland, they're going to fall down even more. So yeah, we could potentially see some gusts, 30, 35 miles an hour, maybe even 40 miles an hour with a minimal tropical storm. But that's not going to be enough to cause any threat to life or significant property. And, you may have a couple of branches down here and there, just like with a thunderstorm. But the overall wind risk is not going to be the major issue or the major story with this system. It's much more the heavy rainfall and flooding. As far as the tornadoes, we talked about this a little bit earlier. I'm not going to say it's zero, but the overall risk should be pretty low. With any landfalling tropical system, there is a risk for tornadoes, but it's generally lower with the weaker storms. And this is going to, in all likelihood, be a weak storm. Ibani says, do you think this level of rain would affect the flights out of New Orleans? It's possible. I can't say with any degree of certainty. It's going to depend on exactly how much rain they get in that area. I think more likely your travel to the airport may be affected more so than the actual flights themselves. Yeah, it's possible the airport runway could flood, but I think it's much more likely that the roads leading to the airport would flood before that. Liam asks, how heavy could the rain be in spots east of Lake Charles? Depends where you're going. I mean, as far as heavy, when we're talking about heavy, I usually think of rainfall rates. And the rainfall rates in tropical systems are usually very high. You could see rainfall rates 4 or 5 inches an hour plus. But the rainfall totals are going to be your bigger issue. So if you look, here is our forecast rainfall totals. You can see the higher rainfall totals are going to be across south central Louisiana, over towards Lafayette, New Iberia, Morgan City, and points further east across southeast Louisiana. Now within that, we could be seeing some significantly higher rainfall totals. So we got this is our official forecast here, but then we add on to that for our worst case scenario, and there are a few areas that could potentially see up to 10 to 15 inches of rain across parts of south central Louisiana. Okay. Dolson asks, how long will the storm stay over the Gulf? Probably maybe about 48 hours or so. We expect it to get out over the eastern Gulf sometime tomorrow. So if we were to say, say it was back out over the Gulf tomorrow morning, we'll be looking at it probably moving back inland across the northern Gulf Coast sometime on Thursday. So maybe not quite that long, maybe more like 24 to 36 hours over the Gulf. Emily asks, what should the Alexandria area expect? Rain. Pretty much just like everywhere else. We're going to be looking at rain. The official forecast right now, 2 to 3 inches of rain. And our worst case scenario, up to 6 inches possible up in the Alexandria area. Not expecting any kind of significant wind threat. Not expecting a major tornado threat or anything like that. It's mainly going to be a wind thing. Ellen asks, are you predicting hurricane formation? No. Right now we're predicting in a less than, we've got a 40% chance it becomes at least a tropical depression. I don't forecast it becoming a hurricane right now. Could it? It's not completely out of the realm of possibility, but it's not likely at this point. Right now, I think we're probably looking at a tropical storm at worst. Paula asks, how quick will it move out? We're going to be dealing with the rain probably until late Saturday or early Sunday. Isaac asks, how much rain is Leesville going to get? Right now, our official forecast for the Leesville area calls for 2 to 3 inches of rain, but in a worst case scenario, up to 6 inches. Courtney asks, do I have a future cast radar, also known as a forecast, that would show estimated timeline for when the storm will hit certain states? Well, first off, we don't do hurricane tracks by radar forecast. We'd be doing that by satellite, if anything. As far as the timeline of when it will hit certain states, I mean, it's hitting Florida now. It's going to be moving into the Florida Peninsula, or the Florida Panhandle, I should say, probably sometime tonight into early tomorrow. For the Alabama, Mississippi coast, and even into southeast Louisiana, we're going to be looking at it probably by tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow evening. And then for south central Louisiana and southwest Louisiana, we're going to be looking at it tomorrow night into early Thursday morning. So I don't need a radar to kind of tell you that. Now, as far as when each individual storm is, or each individual rainstorm is going to hit, we need a radar for that, but I can't tell you that at this point. Liam's asking about the severe thunderstorm threat. We're not expecting severe thunderstorms. You know, when you're talking about tropical systems, we don't get severe thunderstorms in a traditional sense, where we have very strong individual storms. This is more going to be a broad, very wide swath of showers. Shelly asks, this won't be a tropical storm Allison potential setup, is it? Generally, I don't like to compare one storm to another. Every storm's a little bit different, but Allison was a slow-moving tropical storm, if I recall, and that's what we're going to be looking at with this. This is going to be a slow-moving tropical storm, most likely, maybe tropical depression. I don't think it's going to be a hurricane. So yeah, that will have the potential to drop some serious rainfall totals. I'm not going to say it's going to be exactly like Allison, but it's the same general idea. Nikki says, Donald, I bet you had a magic 8-ball sometimes. I don't have one with me. No. I prefer the old coin flip, which I have done on occasion. Not for the forecast, though. Juliana asks, is there any tornado potential? Very low. I'm not going to say it's zero, but the tornado potential would be very low. And if it was going to happen, it would be probably Thursday afternoon through Friday. Taz asks, any idea on when they will issue a name? Tomorrow morning. Well, this is an interesting way of putting it, issue a name. I guess they assign a name more than they issue one, but I guess it doesn't really matter. We'll say it issued. No, but that happens when the storm meets certain criteria. It has to have tropical storm force winds of 39 miles per hour or greater. It has to have a closed low-level circulation. I don't think it's been definitively determined that it has a low-level circulation yet, but it certainly doesn't have tropical storm force winds. Once it gets back out over the Gulf, could it intensify into a tropical storm tomorrow? Yes, that's not out of the realm of possibility. But you'd have to get those criteria first before you can name the storm. There is a Hurricane Hunter aircraft scheduled to go out and investigate the storm tomorrow, I think around 1 p.m. It was originally scheduled to go out today, but it's now over land, so there's no point in sending up a plane to investigate what we can already get by a weather balloon or any other means. So that mission was scrapped, but there will be another one tomorrow as it gets back out over the Gulf. The next name is the D storm. Yeah, it will be Dexter, should it receive a name. I got any Dexters out there? I don't know any Dexters personally. Amanda asked, should I cancel my vacation to Orange Beach, leaving on Sunday morning early? You mean leaving to go or leaving to come? Either way, I wouldn't necessarily cancel it. You're going to be dealing with some rain, obviously, but this is not going to be a threat to your life or property if you're on the beach or at least in a hotel on a beach. That might not be the greatest time, but there's not going to be it's not going to be dangerous. Now, going out into the water may be dangerous if we have some rip currents from some of those gusts and those seas. But just being down there won't necessarily be dangerous. Steven says, I'm heading to Natchitoches from Marksville Saturday a.m. for the forecast. Forecast is rain. Forecast is rain. It's going to rain. Gay asks, will the rain just be off and on in southeast Texas if it stays to southeast Louisiana, but pretty constant if it moves further west? Correct. Generally, yes. If you get under one of those rain bands that's moving from south to north, though, a lot of times you'll get these rain bands that'll set up kind of like that. Then it could potentially be constant. So I'm not going to say for sure one way or the other. But generally, the further away you get from a storm, the more hit and miss it tends to be. Tammy says it's going to be big old raindrops. Yes, it is. Without getting too nerdy on you, tropical systems, they work on what we call warm core processes. And what that means is the raindrops themselves essentially stay in their liquid state from the time that they evaporate to the time they fall out as raindrops, as opposed to most regular thunderstorms, which the updraft in them goes much higher, and a lot of the rain actually freezes, in the upper levels of the atmosphere before eventually falling back down as rain. Now, what's the difference? What does that matter? When you get a freezing type of situation with the thunderstorms, you tend to get smaller raindrops. And with a warm core process where that water stays liquid the whole time, because it stays a little bit lower in the atmosphere, that tends to result in larger raindrops, which means that the storm is a more efficient rainmaker. The bigger drops, they put more water on the ground than a normal thunderstorm would. So that's more of a risk for flooding. And that's part of why anytime we have a tropical air mass in place, there's a risk of flooding, but especially when we're talking about a tropical storm that's producing just copious amounts of these large drops, we get higher rainfall rates, and so the risk of flooding tends to go up. Natalie says, for some reason, I keep having just keep swimming in my head. Let's hope we're not swimming in the floodwaters. Go swim in a pool. Let's stay out of the floodwaters. Because you don't know what might be just swimming along with you. Alligators, snakes. Liam asked about the rip current risk. There will be a rip current risk if we have a more organized storm that becomes a tropical storm. Even a weak tropical storm is usually going to produce some higher wave heights that could potentially produce some rip currents. So yeah, that'll be the case probably along the entire northern Gulf Coast from southeast Texas all the way to the Florida Peninsula. There will be a higher rip current risk for the next few days. Jennifer says, wait, what is going on? Jennifer, rewind and watch. We've been talking for 45 minutes here. I'm not gonna restart, but get it together, Jennifer. You're okay. Just rewind it. This video is rewindable, or somebody can tell Jennifer what's going on. Iota says, or Ayala, I'm sorry, says that's a lot of rain. Keep in mind, the rain you're looking at behind me is a worst case scenario. This is not the official forecast. See, it says worst case scenario there at the top. This is actually our official forecast. So we're looking at anywhere between 1 to 2 inches, or we'll call it 1 to 3 inches across southeast Texas, 3 to 6 across southwest Louisiana, and then 4 to 8 across south central Louisiana. What you were just looking at behind me is a worst case scenario where we could see potentially up to 15 inches in a few spots, but this is not going to be everywhere. Keep that in mind. I'm going to put that right there so we're not scaring people who are just jumping on. Ashley says, will a lot of businesses be closed Wednesday and Thursday? I would say probably not Wednesday, just because it's getting going. Thursday will be depending on how much, how the flood situation is developing. I don't expect that businesses are going to proactively close early. They'll close if they become flooded or if the flood risk increases. Ayala asks, is this going to become a hurricane? We don't expect it to become a hurricane right now. At highest right now, we're thinking tropical storm. And even then, we're probably leaning more kind of low-end tropical storm. Kimberly says, thank you for the raindrop explanation. I always wondered about that. Yeah, that was me trying not to get too nerdy, but yeah, that's Meteorology 101. Susan asks, why do people keep talking about cloud seeding causing these floods, which I don't believe to be true? Any comment on that? No, I have no comment on that. And only because it's just not worth my time, not because I can't talk about it because it's some kind of secret conspiracy. I'm not going to say that there aren't experiments for cloud seeding, but it is certainly not causing anything that we've seen recently. The Texas floods were not caused by cloud seeding. The New Mexico floods were not caused by cloud seeding. The floods ongoing in the Northeast right now were not caused by cloud seeding. And the floods that we're going to get in a few days, if they happen, are not caused by cloud seeding. So let's just leave it at that. Some people exhaust me. Edwina says, I know we can't compare storms, but could this potentially be similar to Barry in 2019? Like you said, I don't like to compare storms because they're all different. They move at different speeds. They have a lot of different characteristics. What I would want to compare this to is any slow-moving tropical system, of which we've had several, in this area over the years. Somebody pointed out Allison a few minutes ago. That was a good example. There are a few others. But, anytime we're talking about a slow-moving tropical system, it's all about the heavy rainfall and potential for flooding. Now, where is that flooding specifically going to occur? It's going to depend on exactly how strong it is, kind of the structure of the storm, where those rain bands are set up. Are there more on the east side? Are there more on the west side? Generally, a stronger storm is going to have more rain on the east side, but with a weak, sloppy system like this, that's not necessarily the case. So that's something to kind of keep in mind too, and that's why I don't like to compare one storm, because the structure of one storm is going to be different from the structure of another. But generally speaking, anytime we're talking about a slow-moving tropical storm, especially a weak one, it's all about the heavy rainfall, and that's going to be the case with this. The flash flooding threat, the heavy rainfall threat, that's the big story with this system. Andre's asking how much rain is expected in DeRidder. Generally speaking, where our official forecast is calling for 2 to 3 inches. Why is this not working? No. I apologize for that. I don't know, my screen froze up for a second. Any dang ways, we're going to be looking at anywhere between about 2 to 3 inches in the DeRidder area. And then for our reasonable worst case scenario, we could be looking at as high as 6 inches. You're pretty close to that 8 inch. So on a high end, in a worst case scenario, 6 to 8 inches in the DeRidder area. Don asks, is the Galveston Bay area and Kemah out of the range for this one, staying more to the east? I think most of the rainfall is going to stay further to the east. That's not to say you couldn't see, you can kind of see on the edge of the graphic here, the possibility of some rain over in the Galveston, Kemah area. But the majority of the heavy rain and the flash flood risk, I think, is going to be further to the east. Kevin asks, will we have any winds? Not any dangerous winds. It might get a little gusty if we have a low-end tropical storm. We could see some wind gusts of 35, 40 miles an hour, but we're not expecting hurricane-force winds. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up for the time being. We've been going for actually almost an hour. A lot of these graphics are already posted on our social media pages. If you didn't see them, this will also be available as a recording for you to review just as soon as we wrap up the briefing here, so you can take a look at that way. If you do have any questions that I missed for some reason, feel free to send us a direct message on Facebook, send us a message on X, send us a message on Instagram. You could email me directly if you'd like. My email is on your screen there. It's donald.jones@noaa.gov. So my name with a dot in the middle, at NOAA, NOAA.gov. I'll be happy to answer your questions that way. You can also give us a call, area code 337-477-5285. Our phones now only operate 8 to 4, so give us a call before 4 p.m., but you can give us a call that way. So lots of ways to get in touch with us if you do still have any questions about this. We are going to do another one of these briefings tomorrow. We're going to plan on doing it at 2 p.m. We'll do it earlier if they do wind up putting a track on it, if they make it a tropical depression or a tropical storm. Then we'll give you an update with that. But otherwise, we will do another one of these tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock. Okay, that's it. So everyone have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Stay safe. Get prepared. It's going to rain. Go get some snackies. Go get some sandbags if the feeling or the spirit moves you. I prefer snackies over sandbags, but either way works. And we'll be back here tomorrow, 2 o'clock or earlier if necessary. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay safe, stay cool. It's still hot out there. It's we got less rain today, so the temperatures are a little bit higher. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow, hopefully with good news.